Sneaky bastards.
So as everyone knows, I've been sick since yesterday.
Yes.
And I spent like part of the time watching all our intros back to back. Only the intro. And then I was just laughing. It felt like laughing therapy to see us doing the introductions.
Yeah. Isn't it the best? I told you, like, on our call earlier, Ronnie always gets annoyed because I'll watch the same intro a few times and she'll be like, haven't you already listened to that? I said, yeah, but it brings me so much joy. Like, I'll just watch it. I don't necessarily need to listen to the show. I'll just watch that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you're going to introduce today, aren't you?
Yeah. Today we have my dear friend for the second time, Stefanie Nicolaou, who is in Nicosia in Cyprus. And we've already had her on the show, Life as a Doula. I'm not sure of the title, but we spoke about her and her journey in helping women give natural birth.
Yeah.
And today we're going to discuss her journey on rape at 25.
There we are.
And let's both agree, this is not, I actually felt excitement because I'm going to get to spend time with Stefanie. But the content did not excite me at all. And yet I feel the trust and love. So where are we going to do this, Andy?
We are going to do that on a wonderful chaos. Yes, here we go.
Hello, Mr. Shalev.
Hello, Mr. Dimitriou. This is our second time in a very short increment of time with Stefanie. The doula show, I thought as I mentioned at the time, I wasn't thinking that I would be as excited about it as I was. And I think the reason that I was really appreciating it was because the way that I heard Stefanie speak about giving birth felt like it was connected to everything that I do in my own life. It was almost like what she explained to me, or what I heard, is she's chosen a path of how to live, like a servant to something bigger, which is the word doula translated. And I laughed when I heard it. I was like, wow, I didn't realize. In a way, I feel like I also feel as a slave to something bigger than myself, which is why sometimes people say, why do you make these stupid decisions? And I'm like, yeah, because it's something bigger here than just what seemed obvious, right?
Isn't it the same with the show that we're doing?
For example, right? For example.
We get asked a lot, why are you doing this? Are you making money?
Why are you doing it? Well, can't you just do it once a week? Why do you need to do it 5 times a week, right? I get that all the time. And I think, it's the same. I planned the trip to walk up the coast of the Netherlands in 2 weeks from now. And that's it's a long journey. And, the obvious answer. Anyone asks me, why are you doing it? I feel exactly like the same answer they gave with the what do you call it? The Mount Everest, because it's there. It's like, yes, there's a ghost. It's pretty incredible, isn't it? 6 days, you can walk the whole thing. I'm on it. I'm doing this. Yeah. So, beautiful. Yeah, we'll talk about that, I think, next Monday when we have our show together. Yeah. So
I actually didn't. You were serious. I saw next week's show and I realized, we're going to talk about me and my family.
Yeah. Well, you were the one that said you wanted to do that show, as far as I remembered. No.
Do you know the funny thing is?
What?
When I saw it today, I was like, I'm not feeling it. That's what I said.
Okay.
And then I sat with it and I saw all the moments where I feel like really subtle contractions.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay, so it's still there. And I feel that it's not something that I'm ever going to find peace with.
Yeah.
Let's just get one thing straight. Everything I share, there's always going to be things which are edgy.
Yeah.
So here we go. Wonderful chaos.
A wonderful chaos. And I think in a way, it doesn't need to be active for you per se. If we just bring it into our space, we'll talk about it, because it's no different from me as well. Yes, there are areas I've made more peace with, but there's a lot of things that I'm conscious of. If I go one more step, then that might make someone uncomfortable. So why would I do that? And so there's a balance there. And we even discussed on yesterday's show, I don't know how much you watched of it with Cass, but Cass said, and I loved it. He said, basically, when you go into the amusement park, you pay $5 admission, and you have to pay that $5 admission, and you can't go into that park and then complain about it afterwards. So in some way, if I'm going to be in the public domain and I'm going to share things, then there will be implications, and I have to be okay with that. And otherwise, don't do it. That just don't do it. Yeah. So Stefanie, today, it's funny because, as you said in the intro, when I see or hear the I was raped at 25, right? That whole, like, I realized we could have framed the discussion totally differently. We could have said overcoming adversity or sexual assault, or in that softer, more gentle. And I realized that when I write the titles, I want to show the visceral, what one has to overcome, because I think we sugarcoat things so much that we don't realize that on a very raw level, that's what the experience was, and that's what the person had to overcome. Yeah. So when we talk to her today, of course, she's past that experience, but the rawness of the reality is that was the reality that she had to live with. And therefore, I like for us to really be honest about how intense it is and not soften that. So
I got goosebumps all over my body just hearing you frame that, and I'm completely with you.
Yeah, I think in the naming of shows, I looked at some of the names I did before, and I realized I was softer than I would be now, because I feel like people have a lot to say and they have very visceral experiences, and I realized that in some ways we try to soften it, and I don't like softening it. I really want us to say this is an honest, real experience, and yes, they're not there now, but this is what it was. Yeah. So yeah. There we are. Ready to bring her on, or is there anything you'd like to share about your health for those that might be interested if you're going to be surviving the next few days?
No, I'm good.
You are COVID negative. Let's at least share that.
I'm COVID negative, people.
Whatever that means, right? Yes. Okay.
Let's bring her on.
I'd say we bring her on. Hello.
Hello again.
It's been, I think we've seen you now twice in the week or something.
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks?
Someone has to be good in numbers.
Anything come out of our last exchange? Because we had our show, did you get any feedback, or did you hear anything from the show we did last time?
Didn't hear anything, but I definitely enjoyed it.
Nice.
And I don't feel like there is a reason that it came before this one. I'm not sure why yet, but let's see.
I had the same feeling. Yeah. You, Bambos?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm being very present with today's subject, and in a way, as two men engaging a woman that had that experience, it feels very, very vulnerable. Like, what kind of fucking question do you even ask?
Yeah.
And like, I even was gonna Google. I caught myself even entertaining the thoughts. Let's Google and see what other interviewers asked. Good questions to ask. And then I realized the moment I do that, it's just going to move me away from staying fully present with what's there. But, and having said that, Stefanie, I mean, how is it for you to be here? I mean, you're in Cyprus. I made a post saying that in Cyprus, these subjects are normally very taboo. And yet you are, and you're talking about it with two guys in Amsterdam.
I live by a philosophy that if something is overcome inside, then it doesn't matter where you are, who you're talking to. And I feel like it's a taboo or a hidden subject in general. It's not just Cyprus, or it may be more in other countries than other countries, but I feel it's generally a subject that is not very much talked about. And yeah, I feel curious with what's this going to be about. And I was actually surprised when Andy said that you feel uncomfortable, because when you mentioned uncomfortable, I thought you meant me. And I'm like, do I feel uncomfortable? And I realized I don't feel uncomfortable. I feel ready to really bring this in the surface, not just for me, but for others as well.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I think the theme that we always bring up on the show in the title of that second book I did was The Wounded Healer, of course. And then in some ways, I've seen that whenever I've made peace with something inside of myself, it's very easy for me to hold space for somebody else who is struggling there. But there's another thing that we also can't deny, is that if you have had this experience with men, right? And then now you have two men asking about it, that we can't tell, for instance, where it bleeds into. Now you see that these people aren't conscious of things that are important for you. That's where the consciousness for me is holding place. Because on other subjects, I mean, we could, you know how we joke on the show, and we'll play and we'll have fun, and we'll do that to the degree that we see that the other person holds it lightly as well. But if they don't hold it lightly and we're joking, then it can really hurt, right? It can double hurt.
Yeah. I want to say up front that if I feel uncomfortable, I'll share it. So that you don't feel responsible for me feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah. You know what'll happen is I'll get a call from my brother later, and he'll say, "You're being like your dad." He'll say, "You're being like our dad." I got that call. They got that call last week.
I love it. Andy's also being called the Gestapo, but that's a different show.
The SS.
A good show, right? Stefanie, just to kind of dive into this, who were you at the age of 25? Because obviously the woman that I know in the last, how long do we know each other now? 7, 8 years? 2013? Who were you at the age of 25?
Wow. I was at a stage where I have quit my job as an embryologist, right when I started it, because I realized that wasn't for me. Because I was looking at my watch when it was going to end. So I realized it wasn't for me. So I started really like traveling or going to a quest. It wasn't just traveling, just moving. It was going in a quest inwardly, and that it manifested like traveling as well. So I was in this journey to meet myself deeper, let's say, to why I'm here on this planet. What am I here to bring? What am I here to share? If it's not to, definitely knew that I wasn't here to just watch my time passing by and waiting for, the day to go home and do something else. So I was in a journey to find that.
And so at this period in your life, like as I've been doing these sort of coaching and training, it's shocking the number of people who have been sexually assaulted. Like shocking. In fact, Bambos, we had a discussion where we often do shows on the word no and the importance of no, and how difficult it is to say no. And one of the exercises when Bambos was doing his game nights was people yelling no in each other's face to experience that power. And what came out of it was that women were triggered so strongly because of it brought up feelings when they didn't feel like they could say no.
Yeah.
It felt like the whole space was possessed.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that we are silently growing up with, and it has so many levels. I mean, for example, saying no to a man that is looking at you, looking at a woman walking down the street, and I felt it many times, and I'm sure many women have, being stripped off by the way, stripped off or stripped down, like
Stripped down, yeah.
Stripped down by the way he's looking at her, and instead of saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" and turn around, which I did after I all these experiences, we shut down our sexuality, we shut down our embodiment, really. So it's just like, so there's a whole journey to first understand that you can't say no, or maybe first to understand there's something wrong. It makes me feel uncomfortable and it's not right. But until the point we perceive that what we've been given as normal, because at a certain level we perceive this, oh, it's normal, they're just looking at my ass, and we take it as normal, and our whole being just shuts down, and then we're like, hey, there's something wrong here. And then next step is to speak about it. No, be angry about it, then speak about it, and then make peace with it, and then create a boundary in your reality. So yeah, it's a long journey to say no.
And when you had, so your experience, now you said you had it at 25, you just came out of not wanting to be doing the work or whatever you were studying at that time, embryology, is that what you, so you get out of that. So you don't have to go into detail of the experience itself, but help me understand, how was it like before and after that experience? So what in you changed, and what did you have to like deal with or make peace with after it?
So I feel like life takes us in no matter what way to meet our deepest calling. So just as as a reference, sorry, I just have some of this. I now work with sexuality and help women embody their sexual and sensual nature. Whether it is through healing for sexual abuse or just to improve the relationship they have with their own sexuality in their own body. So I feel that this is a big part of my work, what I'm here to bring. And life just brought me in a way to really see how I was so shut down. It opened a huge door to see, like, I started off like really feeling that being sexual is shameful. Having sex is sinful unless the guy really marries me and makes sure I am safe with him in terms of like being married to him. Otherwise, it's a sin, and I needed to be taken care of in a way. So starting off from there and moving all the way through this experience in feeling like men and women, we are both born in this body, which is our animal nature. And it's been really sauced around with shame, guilt, and all these taboos around being in our body and being a sensual, a sexual animal. And also it has been dangerous to be that, being in a female body. Sometimes also being in a male body, I guess, but I'll speak just from my experience. So moving through all these doors and clearing one by one all the beliefs that I was given, and to come into more and more into what it feels to me as our authentic human nature. Yeah.
It's interesting because as we speak and I ask you the questions, like I'm always, and this is something that I think that's a flaw, if I were to put it like that, of Bambos and I, is that I speak for me, but I saw Balbus did it in one of our last shows, is we often have this expectation that there was this terrible experience that happened after after the rape and you're 25, and that was something that was almost like you had like a pearl. You had to bring in this dirt, and it had to like go through its metamorphosis and then be made into this pearl. And I see that life isn't always that obvious. It isn't just like at 25 it happened, and then the next 5 years you were struggling, or so. In a weird way, I don't necessarily see how your experience at 25, what you had to go through to make that peace. Like what would you say if there were stages of your journey? What did that look like? And maybe that's what I meant. Maybe it's assumptions that we make when we ask these questions.
No, I understand totally. I didn't talk about the journey to get me where I am today. Actually, for years, that was very interesting because I was trying to resolve it inside me, but at the same time, I had it here at the background. So I knew that this happened to me, but I never named it. I never even admitted it to myself. So it was a generally intense period of my life because I had a huge opening happening, or like an awakening happening in me, which I say now that the more we move into the light, the shadow needs to also come out. So that was part of my shadow. And it was funny because before, I'm deviating a little bit from the question, but I feel I need to say this. Before I had this experience, when I started realizing how we attract everything in our lives by who we are and what we're vibrating, I got the question once, so what about people who get raped? Do they want to get raped? I don't believe in what you're saying. And I'm like, yes, there is some part of them that is vibrating the opposite polarity. I'm a victim. So after having it at the background.
Can we slow that down a second? What you just said was so, controversial in some ways. And I can honestly relate to, with a vibration, you'll often find the counter to that. So as I hear you speak, it's not like you wanted it, obviously, but the fact that you became the victim to we use these terms, I know that they're not necessarily perfect, but that there was someone looking for someone like you because that was the energy that they were looking to dominate, let's say. Would that be fair to say?
I would just put it in a general term so it's more understood in terms of we live in a polarity planet. So the aspect of any part of us that is willing to be a victim or sacrifice is attracting the opposite polarity of being abused, of the abuser, and the over dominating power over. So both of these are in their shadow. So that means they're not integrated into their healthy aspect. So yes, it is pure physics for me that it happens this way. And there's like a very specific string of a polarity, because not everybody, we all have a victimizing aspect of us, and hopefully growing out of it throughout our lives. But for me, it just had to happen this way. And I really see why. Like obviously it wasn't easy. If you ask me, like, what's the worst thing that could happen to you? Like, if I had to list things, this would be one of the worst things that could happen to me. And yet, like, this whole journey shaped me and to be who I am and to bring forward in the fastest way possible what I'm here to bring. So I might have spent like another 10 years of my life not really embodying what I'm here to bring.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I want to go back into this point where it's at the background. And this is a mechanism that our being uses to put at the back experiences that are very intense. So it's a natural survival mechanism, fight, flight, or freeze. So it remains frozen at the back. And something inside me was still trying to find a solution, still trying to like understand, and it was there, but really not brought here to see it. So my journey brought me to do a tantric healing therapy course, like to be able to heal through tantra, like body work, tantric body work. And even there, in the sessions where I was receiving, it was coming out in bits and pieces, but never like, boom, here, it's in front of me, I see it. So after doing the course and being trained and then working on people, one day I was just meditating, and somehow my meditation took me into my womb, and one by one, all the men I slept with were coming in my awareness and almost like clearing the space of my womb from these imprints. And at one point, this man came, and to be honest, I don't remember his name, though he was in the circle of like my, I won't say friends, but people I know. And I knew his name. I don't remember his name up to this day. I don't remember his name. It just deleted it. So it just came. And I was like, whoa, I was so shocked to finally like, because it needs, this healing process requires, it's like layers of an onion that needs its own time, tools, and consciousness, and the right environment for it to come to the surface. So it just needed that specific moment for me to come out. And then from there was another round of big healing and big like releasing it from my cellular memory, and not so much like the story, though pieces of the story were coming into my memory again. It was more about releasing it from the imprints of my body and finding the side effects that it had in me in a very sublime level. Yeah.
And what were those side effects?
Like, for example, being unworthy or being powerless. Though I feel powerful in many aspects of my life, it's like this streams of unconsciousness or powerlessness in my case, that they were still there. And it almost made me see how now I knew I had like teeth and claws, and I knew that I could use them. Before I had them, but they were just there. And I know how to access that, and I know when to use it and where, and all this what you mentioned before about boundaries, and and it has so many levels, even energetically. So that's a blind spot.
How did that experience also impact your relationship to men?
Oh my God, yes, of course. There is this, and I feel like to a certain extent, a lot of women have this, whether they've been abused or not. It's like this fear for the masculine power. Of course, always in its unintegrated, unhealthy form. Because this dynamic lives with us, is alive everywhere in many levels of our lives. If in men have been hurt by it, women have been hurt by it. So it's more like my relationship to men was more like improved through healing the relationship to myself, to my inner masculine, to my inner woman, my inner man, and bringing those elements into integration. So I see everything as a reflection. For example, attracting men that were not committed to me, not ready for commitment, which is one element of the immature masculine, for example. So through all this journey, all these aspects of immature feminine and masculine were coming into my awareness and were really asking me to heal them through pain. Because life, no matter what, if we have a physical disease or emotional disease, we'll do everything to give us the right direction. And it does that through uncomfortable emotions and disease, physical disease, which are correlated, of course. So yeah, my relationship to men improved. I stopped wanting to prove myself. I felt more safe being me. I have to admit that I still have some subconscious, not so subconscious because it's coming up, like anger towards men. Not men in particular, like male, to the male energy. I have some anger coming up in certain triggers, through certain triggers, but that doesn't have to do with just my own experience. Like healing my own experience is like giving access to this deep wounding of the whole planet, really. It's not just my story. It's like,
Collective.
oh my God. Yes, it's so collective. This anger towards being abusive in general, violation. Look what do we do to the planet? What do we do to each other? What do we do to our own bodies?
Yeah.
So, yeah, my relationship to men is improving more and more.
I also know that in the last year, you're in I think in one of the deepest loving relationships you've ever been in, as far as I know.
Yeah, it's true. And it is bringing some of these leftovers of rage and anger and feelings of mistrust out.
So this is Andy doesn't know about this, and I'm going to bring it up and see if you're comfortable discussing it. But along our journey, I was always a little bit in my head like you were working with men in your house on a one-on-one, and I always felt really uncomfortable when you did that, especially when people would just call you, make an appointment, and a woman alone in a house, anything can happen. And the assumption that I always made was you wanted to heal the men. And back then I didn't know what happened to you in the past. Like I discovered it during a photo shoot, right? So can you speak a little bit about this part of your life?
Yeah.
Is it also sourced from the past experience?
It's interesting because after like going through this cycle of working with men through tantric healing, so helping them with their sexuality, actually what I was doing, and now not working with men, just like focusing on women, what I was doing, it was healing my relationship to the masculine. And because I find myself a bit intense sometimes in terms of like I want to test the edges and like go all the way to in the fire. So that's what I did. I put myself literally in the fire in front of it to see, like, to feel it to the bone, like how do I relate with this? So it was almost like bringing what I was scared the most in my own house. So in a way you can say I was in control in the sense that I created the space for it now. So I manifested the masculine energy, the male, so I can see my own self around it, to be honest. And that by itself had its own journey of me being called to be so in tune with my intuition, and so sharp that I would sniff any aspect of the masculine that was still in the shadow, and I would name it straight away, and name it to the man that was coming to me for that reason. But because of my experience and my, let's say, kind of conscious space, I was like, I may have been also a bit protective of myself, obviously. But in that space, I was able to bring out the healing for me and for them.
Did you
because
run
I
into,
had to stand so strongly for it.
Did you run into any uncomfortable situations there, or was it really like you had the container, you invited them in, and you knew how to manage it, or were there times when you're like, okay, this has gone to a place that I'm not comfortable anymore?
I did have, but then every time it was about catching my intuition and being so one with it, so that I don't need to experience anything that is beyond my boundaries. Because that was the very thing that brought me into having the experience of sexual abuse in the first place.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Because if you ask me what I could have done differently, if I had any sense, I would say, yes, I did. I did. But sometimes we need to go through the experience to understand, like, oh my God, I knew this. I had that feeling. I caught myself feeling uncomfortable, and I still did it. And it's kind of uncomfortable when you want to break through your boundaries and expand your edges. But it's different to your intuition when it speaks to us and says, like, don't go there.
Yeah. Yeah, we did a show recently called Trusting Your Experience, and what you're speaking to is exactly that. Like, but if you're shut down, then you don't actually allow yourself to hear what the experience is, and then so really what we're saying is actually getting rid of the filter and saying, wow, this doesn't feel right, and then acting on it, and that's something that I think takes time, and as you say, takes some mistakes, because you're like, oh, I did it once, I'm never going to do that again.
Yeah.
Well, I love how you connected that, Andy.
Yeah, but this is it. That's the intuition. I mean, there's what I've noticed as you spoke and you said in the background, like I know all of that background life for the years of that background life, the noise that was there that didn't feel right, but like I didn't have a guiding principle or a guiding sense of what made sense. So everything was arbitrary. And on yesterday's show, I think that or maybe it was another show, was that freedom is the absence of choice. Was my mentor always used to say that, and because there's something so much bigger that you don't even have a choice anymore. You're guided by what just is right, and there's and not righteousness. It's not blaming, as if no, it's just it's right, and it guides you. And there's something there that I took away from our doula discussion I mentioned when we began, was that I'm like, oh, I see our lives are dedicated to something bigger. If you try to explain it to somebody, then they'll try to make maybe more sense of it than they should. In a way, it's like, no, it's a deep sense of knowing, and when it's off, and allow that to guide you. Yeah.
And that comes into how we are trained or growing up with to or like putting the mental navigation on a pedestal and ignoring anything, first of all, that we cannot see with our eyes or count, which is our intuition, but also the wisdom of our body. So I feel that part of this journey has made me become much more one with these two factors that are tend to be like ignored by the collective of how we used to grow up, because I feel like we're moving in another era now of how we're meant to be as humans. So it just really brought me into this. You're not this. It's like you're moving from here, from this intelligence, and from your body. how does that really feel? So yeah.
Yeah, we talk about that with you, Bambos, when we say, I've often used the word sensual. Like, I feel like you go through the world with a very sensual intelligence. Yeah. Yeah.
Stefanie, I feel like I was trying to tune into the guy that raped and who was he? Like just as an energy, as like did you ever try to like tune into who was this person and what made him do what he did?
Oh. Okay, so how should I address this? Well, I'll say it. If it doesn't make sense, let me know. I'll tell you more about it. But I feel, well, I know now after decoding what happened and the continuation of the events that led to the physical abuse, because the abuse started not from a physical space, but from a metaphysical space. Let's call it black magic, which was like, I don't like to use terms, but I'm going to use it for this one. For this specific one, I feel it was black magic. Like, I know it was, because it was meaning, what I mean by that, it was a conscious, intentful manipulation, energetic manipulation. So from what I came to understand through this whole decoding of my experience, there are these beings that they call power beings, which are taking over some human bodies, and they act through them. And even after having this experience, I was not believing it, because I was like, no, this is bullshit. Even though my intuition, my knowing was like, I know what I saw and I know what happened. And I was like, no, this is bullshit. So after going through all these doors, I now can say that this is the truth. So these power beings will take over people that are, some people are aware of it and they're using it on purpose, and some others are not. And they're just very passive and unconscious. So the more of our consciousness is not there, it gives space to unconsciousness to enter and act through us, let's say, whatever you call them, beings or whatever. So there are people that are aware that they're giving their power away with let's say the trap to get power, because they're thirsty for power. So by that being taking over them, it's like it's giving them power, but they're giving their power away, really.
Yeah.
So that's how it started, by this guy that knew that he was using this and he felt powerful, but he didn't sexually abuse me physically. He was just doing the energetic part. And then I was in Portugal at the time, and I thought I was denying it. I put it at the back because I was so confused. I didn't have any guidance. I felt I don't believe this. I was denying my own reality, basically. Then I left and I went to the States, and that's where I've met this guy. We're working at a farm together at the point, and he was there in a normal, in the day. It was just like, a guy that was unconscious, I would say, in the sense of I don't like to put labels or judge. He was smoking a lot of weed and having this parasitic kind of energy. For me, it's like there's nothing wrong with people that smoke weed. It's just like a space where I am just giving life away. In a way, I'm giving life away, and I'm just expecting for the river to take me without me doing anything. But this can be interpreted in many ways. We're all taken by the river of life. This is not what I want to say.
No, but I got your picture. I know when you say the parasitic energy, and it's not that it's equated directly with smoking weed, but I also I see the persona you're sketching here. It's someone who's living not a very active life and sort of waiting for stuff to happen around them.
Yeah. So I feel like he was attracted to me, but he wasn't directly expressing that.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't necessarily strong, or it's interesting because I never actually tuned into him. Because I know that what did the action wasn't his soul, let's say. It was that I really believe is that another entity is an entity. And then from what I realized after, through my experience with like healing through facilitating and holding space for other women, there is a general like energy that has been running through our, let's say, collective field. As we have the light, we have the darkness as well. So yeah, I believe that he was taken over by that, to be able to do it. Because when I was in that space of danger, let's say, or just to mention, he gave me drugs. He dragged me to sexually abuse me. So you can say that I was in this altered state of being as well. And because I'm very energetically sensitive, I could see a lot of things and sense a lot of things. And I have clarified which of those things were my fears and how my fears were presenting that, and what of that was a fact that now is a fact for me, for my reality.
Yeah.
I'm actually assuming, Stefanie, that after the event there was a lot of shame and possibly denying.
Sorry?
After the event, I'm assuming that there was a lot of shame and denial until you could find peace with it. Or did you?
I didn't even feel shame. I felt so unsafe, like being in another country on my own, and I just felt I couldn't trust anybody, which again made me so sharp. But at the same time, I was in this fight or flight state for a long time. My nervous system. Now I understand about the nervous system and how it responds to trauma and stuff. Like, oh my God, I don't know how I went out of there, but like I knew I had to leave. I knew I had to leave the place. I didn't know who to trust. It felt like I was shifting from this paranoia state, everything is dangerous, into bring yourself together, follow. Like, it was very, very, very intense. I didn't know who to speak to. I was just like, this guy is dodgy. I don't even know what I was saying to people, but I knew I had to leave that place, and I did. And I feel like I remember saying, wherever there are demons, there are also angels. Like, I really got to see that 100%. Like the polarity of like this density of darkness exists there, but also this density of like light exists at the same space. So I just went there, and it kind of like I moved to another place and stayed there for a little bit more in the country, but I felt so unsafe. Not shameful, no. So unsafe, so confused, so at the same time, though, that was one part of me. The other part was like so strong and so sharp in my intuition and sensual guidance, as you said.
I'm always curious from that moment, like, what were like the major things that needed to happen for you to heal from that? Because you had that experience. So were there pivotal moments in your life that you said, this is what I needed to make peace with in order to move on? Can you remember such moments?
First, I want to say that, as I mentioned before, consciousness escapes the body in traumatic situations so that we don't feel it. And that's, I know that that's what was happening to me. I was out of my body when it was happening. Really, totally out. I had visions of like another dimension that was just not there. Until one point that I just got up and pushed him, and I just looked at him and said, enough, you're not doing this, I'm out of here. Like I actually managed to get my power. And it was so interesting because I feel that moment was so important for me. I was out of my body and something just woke me up. As I said, I was so dragged and passive on the floor. And I just like pushed him and looked at him with like, I feel like if I saw myself in the mirror, I would be scared looking at myself. It was so strong. It's like a panther, just like, don't do that. Don't you ever do that again. I just looked at him and whoa, I felt like I got power from like lifetime. I feel it was important that it happened right there in that moment. So I feel that was the first thing. And then, as I said, I got it back in my background for many years, and yet I was looking to understand. The metaphysical aspect was also involved and was making me really confused. There were no clear answers. So pieces of the puzzle were coming bit by bit. But tantric healing therapy really helped me, and like me, I almost feel like my call to be a tantric healing therapist and working with sexuality was because I needed healing myself. So I was gravitated towards that, and that was a big part of it, because the trauma had to be moved out of my body. No matter how much talking we do about it, it doesn't work. It just has to be moved from its cellular memory, meaning that pieces of the consciousness that remains frozen has to feel safe to come back.
Yeah.
To come back in. And I feel like Bambo's witnessed me in one of moments like that. Remember Bambo?
The photo shoot.
Actually, it was before the photo shoot. I feel like I was going through this healing so much on my own. Mostly on my own, and like releasing all the trauma that were coming in bit by bit and crying it out and shouting and letting it out through my body. But at one point I just like really felt I wanted to be held, and I felt I wanted to be held by a man. That I feel like we hold keys for each other, and our physical body actually needs each other at some point to really bring all the experience into integration. And Bambus happened to be there, and I feel like you held me, and I was crying. Remember?
Yeah.
So I just like, oh my god, I really needed that. I feel like I had hugged before, but it was the right moment and it had to be a man. Like it really had to be a man. So like I'm really grateful for that. And yeah, that being held in safety, I feel is one of the most important elements of that. And that's, I would say, what tantric healing therapy does. So, and another pivoting moment was when I was actually in a training, and one of the women was working on me. So the sexual abuse didn't happen from the vagina; it happened from the anus, because I pushed him in that moment. I knew I couldn't have him inside my vagina. Like I knew it. Something just like, you're not going in there. So he just went in the anus, and because I was with drugs, I didn't feel pain in that sense. I was out of my body anyway. So yeah, there was a training that we're doing anal work for releasing like specific muscles of the pelvic floor. And I didn't think I would have any trauma coming up, because by that point I was working on it a lot. and yet it was the first time that someone was going in the same area in terms of like purposefully for healing, let's say. So yes, it just a big part of it came out.
I can't deny listening to you. My stomach turned 100 times. When you work with women, Stefanie, who have had a similar experience, at least when I work, if I'm with people who have had similar traumas as me, I get to relive my own pain. How do you experience that?
I actually feel empowered, and I feel a part of me feels very empathic, and I actually had to work with that, because at that point I have to be there for the other person. And being empathic in a line of like actually empathizing in the level that I can't, that a part of me cannot fully be there for them, was showing me that I still had work to do. So I feel that it's not about not feeling each other, because it's our human nature to feel each other. But if I'm reliving my trauma, that means it's still a trauma.
Yeah.
So I feel empowered to be doing this, and because there is no other modality that can actually go into the same area and go through this whole map that holds the cellular memory and release it from the body, and hence the nervous system and the brain. Yeah.
You know, when I was thinking, because I'm a bit older than both of you. And that's what at least I look a lot older than Bambos. I remember when I was dating and I went out with women who had had sexual assault or molestation in their past. It was incredibly hard to have sex. And since I was empathetic, there was I remember one woman, she would leave her body, and then and then I would feel like it then would feel like rape from my experience, because now she's not here to even say yes or no to what's going on right now. And so I remember, and I didn't have the faculty to deal with it at that time. I remember just being incredibly uncomfortable, and it hurt even more, because I would try to bring forward the topic, not as the complaining partner, more as the loving. But I also realized I wasn't the psychiatrist for this person, but it was such an issue that I needed to address it in a loving way. And it was hard because the more the person shared, the less I could do. And nothing, I couldn't change anything. And yet I felt a deep helplessness. And eventually I just had to end the relationship, because I just didn't know where to go. There was just no avenue that I saw or had access to at that time in my life. And I could imagine that, there's the trauma that the woman has, and then the man that comes out afterwards doesn't know how to even be with that with the woman. And it created for me, it happened on at least 2 or 3 occasions, a lot of confusion.
Oh, wow. It's very interesting to hear your perspective as a man. I've never put myself in that space, because that's what it happens. And you're right. It's such an delicate subject. It's so real for the person. When the trauma is triggered, the people go out of their bodies, because it's like it brings it up, and you need to have the right tools to hold space for these people. Oh, I could imagine it's really difficult. And actually, this has been one of my rules, first for myself, but also when my sharing my work with women, you need to be in your body in order to have sex, in order to, first in the healing, that's the job of the healing, is to keep bringing them back to feel what's there, so that the consciousness doesn't escape anymore. But in the sexual relationships, we need to be in our bodies. Otherwise, who you're having sex with? Like, there's nobody there. It's just like an empty vessel.
A lot of times, Stephanie, actually, even last week, I met one of my ex-lovers who, it was a very brief moment, and I had the same experience as Andy. She would leave her body, and I talked about it. It's like, hun, where do you go? It's like at some point you're not there anymore. And she wasn't even aware that it was happening.
Mm.
She embarked on a journey from childhood abuse. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but then she went on a journey of being a kind of dominatrix and always being the dominating partner with men, and it felt that that was her way of coping with sex. If I'm in power, then I don't have to deal with whatever's there. But she wasn't even aware that she was abused. So through that interaction, she had to deal with, hey, what is going on? And she's still working with it. And I'm wondering, to the degree that she's open, do you work with women still?
I work with women, yes, because I realized my path took me into this and like tell me focus on this now. And what you mentioned about not knowing it, this is where I said the first step is recognizing that you actually have, because our collective experience normalizes abuse in many levels and so much that we don't even know we've been abused. A woman is abused, her body is abused every time that a man just pulls out of her when they have sex so fast. So that's abuse. So it comes with awareness from both male and female, and the way we treat ourselves and then each other, so that we stop recreating the cycles of abuse. Of abuse. Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you it's one of the things in my life when I go back to, there's a lot of discomfort because I separated because I couldn't connect, but I also felt at that time like I was leaving this person to suffer again. It was really not it was not a comfortable situation, because it was like I'm leaving the person because there was no tools either of us had to address it, and I didn't see clarity on how she was progressing in a way that made sense for me, at least at that time. So yeah, I remember looking back and often feeling uncomfortable. It wasn't ugly. In fact, I think she reduced so many emotions in herself, but I could obviously feel them, that there was no big bad breakup or anything. It was just, oh, this just doesn't make sense to continue. But yeah, that just felt very sad. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's part of the pattern as well. Bambos and I've discussed it as well, and you mentioned it at the beginning of the show, is that there was this attraction to the weak female, however the terms you use, that the not to victimize, but to take care of. So the caretaker. And I see that was a very much an earlier prototype that I would go to find and take care of. And then it was much later that I saw that those relationships, you want to take care of, and then they don't do the things you want them to do, and then you resent them for not doing those things, and then it gets ugly, the relationship. Bambos nods his head up because he knows that I know. But I went through more cycles than you did, probably, Bambos, to get there. So at least that you got that going for you. But I guess what I'm saying is that when you talked about the light and the dark energies and the extremes attracting one another, I certainly could identify with that for many of my earlier relationships in life.
Yeah. It happens in so many levels, but to be honest, it really starts within ourselves. Because what you mentioned about the relationship of attracting people who need help. There is part of us, because I attract that too, that is willing to sacrifice to that very fine line between love being not selfish, but also not sacrificing. So it's again integrity, and integrity in love. So why am I seeking validation? Because and I seek that through helping. Because when I'm helping, I'm validated. So there's all these questions again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've gone over our hour. Have you got any final comments, Bambos?
I love you, Steph.
Yeah.
I love you. Is there anyone watching us?
Yeah, we've got some good listeners. We've got some.
Do we
They
have
stayed with
questions?
us. Yeah. Well, no real
Questions?
questions. I didn't, to be honest with you, on any show which we take on, like I don't know if I mentioned it live or before we went live, but everyone's telling me the show is a bit too raw. Like they're like, Andy, come on. Like you're putting on some topics that like I don't want to sit an hour through. I'm having a hard enough time getting through a day. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, that's the only way I really want to live, because it's in that rawness where we really get to experience and not rationalize it out to where it no longer, you know, it becomes sanitized. So in that way, our viewership are people who are diehards, but they come, you know, we're Oprah to 10 people. That's what we know for sure. And Bola Long says sex is so deep. So that's what Bola Long leaves us with. Yeah. Yeah, I would say what
I think we can have Stefanie on again. We can talk about sex is so deep.
Yeah.
I would love to talk about that.
And you know what's so bad is because Ronnie is watching The Office. You know The Office. I don't know if you guys have seen or watched The Office, but there's this Michael character, Scott, that says always the most inappropriate things all the time, and all I hear myself now saying is that's what she said. Because that's the bad joke of Michael Scott on every episode of The Office. You get it, Bambos, or not?
No, but
I'll have to explain it to you offline.
Run wife, just to say.
Ronnie's my wife. She binge watches shows here and there. This is the one we've got going on right now. So I don't think we need to go off air, Bambos. I think we can leave altogether and just thank you for being here with us. Yeah.
Tomorrow we have Stop Fighting Your Nature with Stephen Rudolph, Andy.
Yeah, our Vietnamese. He's in Vietnam. He's going to share what happens when you don't live your nature. Yeah.
And on Thursday, March 4, I play poker for a living with Brad Wilson.
A random discussion. I have absolutely no idea, but I thought that's so weird to actually have gambling as a life. I just wanted to have an hour to discuss it. Yes.
I'm really happy for you. And
maybe we'll get somebody else to interview him on that day. You don't want to join.
Not there. And Friday, March 5th, Unlocking the Emotional Brain with Niall Khan.
Yeah, that's going to be a great one, because Neil he's doing the cognitive therapy, which is very much in line with the And It's Fucking Great, where you twist the brain to have a new neural pathway when you re-kilter it to actually experience the same thing in another way. So it's very much what I'm doing with the tool with The Last Letter or the Wounded Healer book. So we're going to talk to him about someone that does it professionally. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Great.
So see you guys tomorrow, and we're going to have another episode tomorrow on
A Wonderful Chaos. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.